Hello algebra students, welcome back to Mr. Ferna's algebra class. Today we are going to talk about polynomial vocabulary. This is very crucial for the entire unit because as I'm instructing, every time I say one of the words, if you don't understand what it means, what happens is you're trying to figure out what that word I said was, and then you missed everything else that follows. So knowing the vocabulary is very, very important. So let's begin. So this lesson is all about I can recognize and define vocabulary of quadratic expressions, and I can rewrite expressions in descending exponential order. And you'll see that we call this standard form in a few minutes. Okay? Now, right now, take a few seconds to rate yourself where you're at on each of those I can statements, and let's begin. First off, you guys know what a term is in algebra. Alright, a term is basically a coefficient and variables linked by multiplication. Okay, so we have, this concept of a term, and it's something like 3x squared, where 3 is the coefficient and x squared is your variable expression. That is a term. Okay. Now, when we take these terms and we combine them, all right, by addition or subtraction, we basically get what we call a polynomial. So, a polynomial is a bunch of terms, okay, linked by addition and subtraction. Alright, now when we say a bunch of terms, we're basically talking about monomials. Alright, and we're taking these monomials and we're linking them by addition and subtraction. So what is a monomial? Well, a monomial is basically a polynomial with one term. Okay, so when we look at it, 3x is a monomial. 4x squared is an example of a monomial. 6x to the third y z. This is a monomial. Alright, it's a polynomial with exactly one term. Now, if we extend it to what a binomial is, okay, a binomial is a polynomial with, what is the prefix for bi? 2. So it's a polynomial with two terms. Okay, so when we look at an example of a polynomial with two terms, or a binomial, 3x plus 5, that's a binomial. 6x to the third plus 7x squared, that's a binomial because you have one and two terms. Then, a trinomial. When you think about the prefix tri, what comes to mind? Right? 3. So a trinomial is basically a polynomial with three terms. So an example of this, 4x squared plus 6x plus 5. Notice there are no like terms that can be combined, so you can only keep it as a polynomial with three terms. If we do 6x to the fifth plus 4x to the fourth minus 3x to the third, right? This is a trinomial. I have 1, 2, 3 terms linked by addition or subtraction. So basically, anything above 3 terms, we simply call anything above 3 terms, we just call that a polynomial. Because in Algebra 1, we really don't go far beyond 3 terms when we're dealing with any algebraic expression. So, when we basically say we classify these polynomials by number of terms, is we give them the name monomial, binomial, trinomial, or polynomial. So down below, we have a bunch of polynomials here, and we want to classify these by the number of terms. So when I look at example 1, this polynomial has 3 terms. So, how would we classify this by number of terms? Well, since you have 3 terms, we would classify this as a trinomial. Okay? The next one, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Since you have 4 terms, anything above 3 we just call a polynomial. Example 3, we have 2 terms. If we have 2 terms, we basically call that a binomial. And the last one, here we have 1 term, and since we only have 1 term, we call that a monomial. Okay, so anytime you're asked to classify a polynomial by the number of terms, you're either going to use monomial, binomial, trinomial, or polynomial. So, as we move along, there's a certain consistency we like to write our polynomials in the form of, and that is what we call standard form. Now, standard form is when the polynomial is written in descending exponential order. Okay, so what that means is if I have 3x squared plus 6x minus 5, notice the exponents. Exponent 2, although we don't see an exponent on x, we know it would be 1, and then here we have our constant, right? So right there we're in descending order, descending exponential order. Now the exponents give us what we call the degree of a polynomial. So when we refer to the degree of a polynomial, what are we talking about? Well, we classify not only by number of terms, but we also classify by degree. And the main reason is when we state the degree of a polynomial, it does tell us a story about what the graph will look like. So it's very important if we see, a degree 2 polynomial, also known as a quadratic, we know the form is going to be in, the graph is going to be in the shape of a U or upside down U. So, looking at this, the degree of a polynomial is the largest exponent when the polynomial is written in standard form. Okay, so if I take 3x to the 4th plus 2x to the 3rd plus 3x squared, right? If I look, the highest exponent here, when it's written in descending order by its exponents, this would be a degree 4 polynomial. Now, the leading coefficient is basically the coefficient of the term with the highest degree when written in standard form. So if I look at the example I did above, right, 3 would be the leading coefficient because it's written in standard form. The highest degree is 4, so the coefficient of the highest degree, term with the highest degree, is 3. Now, we do have certain, so not only do we classify polynomials by a number of terms, but we also classify it by the degree of a polynomial. Now, a degree 0 is basically what we call a constant, alright, meaning there's no variable expression that can change its value. Okay, such as 4 would be not only a monomial by number of terms, but it's degree 0 because there's no variable expression. Now, degree 1 is what we call linear. Alright? And that means the highest degree is 1. So an example of this would be 3x plus 5. If you look, the exponent on x would be 1, which makes it linear. Also, 4x would be a degree 1 or linear polynomial. Degree 2 polynomial we call a quadratic. Okay, and an example of what this would look like: 4x squared plus 5x minus 2 is the degree 2, but anytime we have a degree 2 polynomial, we call it a quadratic. Then, degree 3, we call this cubic. Alright, an example of that would be, say, 6x to the 3rd, or, say, 5x to the 3rd plus 6x squared minus 8x plus 2. right? Both of these would be example of a cubic polynomial. Okay, so being able to classify by number of terms is important, but it's also important to be able to classify it by the degree. So let's look at a couple of examples here. Okay, example 1. What we want to do is write the expressions in standard form, classify the polynomial by the number of terms and the degree, and then state the leading coefficient. So we look at here, what term has the highest exponent? This one here. So when we go to write it in standard form, not only do we have to keep in mind of the term, but the sign of the term also. We always take the sign to the left of the term. So we're going to start with negative 10x squared. Then we're going to go in descending exponential order. So negative 10x squared followed by positive 12x. Since it's positive, we're going to add it. Then the constant. Since it's 4, positive 4, we're going to add it. So now this is in standard form. Now when we name it by the number of terms, we have 1, 2, 3 terms. Therefore, we're going to call that a trinomial, because that is a polynomial with 3 terms. Name by degree. The highest exponent when it's written in standard form is 2. Well, what did we call up above a degree 2 polynomial? A quadratic. And what is the leading coefficient? Well, what is the coefficient of the term with the highest exponent when written in standard form? That would be negative 10. Next one. Alright, standard form. I look. Highest exponent across the board is 3. So that's going to be our first term. So we start with positive 8x to the third. Now I'm going to go in descending order by degree. So 8x to the third followed by minus 2x squared. Then minus 7x. And then plus 5. I've written these, keeping track of all the signs, right, in descending order by exponent. Now this one has 4 terms. What do we call a polynomial with 4 terms? We call that just a polynomial. The name by degree, well, the highest exponent is 3. Therefore, what do we call a degree 3 polynomial? We call that a cubic. And the leading coefficient of that term is 8. So, what I want you guys to do is take a few minutes here to go ahead and try the you-try problems that follow. And once you're done with the you-try problems, you can press play again and see how well you did on each of the examples. So let's look at this here. So number 1, standard form. Okay, that is just basically in standard form already because there's only one term. Name by number of terms, since there's only one term, it's a monomial. Name by degree, since there's no variable expression, we say it's a constant. And the leading coefficient would just be 6. Example 2, when we write it in standard form, we start with the highest exponent, 8x squared, followed by minus 3x, and then minus 7. 3 terms tells me it's a trinomial. The name by degree is a, name by degree would be a quadratic because the highest degree is 2. And the leading coefficient here is 8. Example 3, standard form, highest exponents, 3. So 3x to the third, followed by plus 8m squared, minus, that's supposed to be an m, minus 6m, plus 7. 4 terms tells me it's a polynomial. And the name by degree, the highest degree is 3, therefore it would be a cubic, and the leading coefficient would be 3. So, standard form here, 5x we start with, minus 10. 2 terms tells me it's a binomial. Name by degree. Since the highest degree is 1, we say it's linear, and you'll understand that later on, where the leading coefficient in this case is 5. So, example 5. What is the difference between classifying a polynomial by degree and the number of terms? Well, when we classify by degree, we look for the highest exponent. When we classify by number of terms, right, we look for how many number of terms we are adding or subtracting. And again, it is important to know each and every one of these vocabulary words. So, hopefully, this lesson makes sense. And just to let you know, once you turn to the homework, what you'll see is on the back side is an extra credit assignment. And that is if you take and organize these vocabulary words and what they mean in a creative way using some form of technology, print it out, hand it in for extra credit. So, hope you enjoyed it. Get the homework done, and we'll see you tomorrow in class.